it is my great pleasure to introduce our Wisdom Dialogue inaugural speaker, Dr. Eleanor Sullivan. And you've got a lot of information about her wonderful accomplishments, her education, and her background, but I wanted to share with you a personal story. I came to know Eleanor Sullivan many years and long ago when she came to me one day and she was running for president of the Honor Society of Nursing, Sigma Theta Tau International. And she said, Dan, I want you on my board. I want you to think about running for the board of directors of the Honor Society of Nursing, Sigma Theta Tau International. And one of the things you need to know about Eleanor is she's very much into gender balance. She's very much into diversity. She is a woman with passion, principles, and practices, and she wanted diversity on that board. Well, that invitation, quite frankly, changed my life because I went on then to be on the board of directors of the Honor Society of Sigma Theta Tau International for 8 years, and then ultimately serving as the president from 2003 to 2005. And then she doesn't stop with invitations, you know. she kind of identifies talent and uses her influence in very specific ways. And so she then became the editor, I think, of the Journal of Professional Nursing. She was the editor of the Journal of Professional Nursing for a while, which is the official document of the American Association of Colleges of Nursing. And so again, she tapped me and she said, Dan, I think I want you to be the editor of the education column, and it will only be for a 2-year period. And you just have to write, 6 things a year or something. So I said, yes, Eleanor, I'd be glad to do that. And so I think what I learned from that is that the power of an invitation and the identification of a purpose with what you want to do, and then linking and using your influence to invite people to participate and engage with you was very influential. Actually, her invitation changed my life. So, thank you. So, it is with greatest pleasure that I now introduce Eleanor, and she is going to help us learn about becoming influential. Eleanor.
I think I'll be fine. Well, thank you so much, Dan. I had sort of forgotten the things I tapped him for. He just moved into it and did it. And I am so honored to be your inaugural speaker at this series, and so excited about this series and the potential it has. You may or may not know that I was on the faculty here for a few years in my career, and what I really loved about Minnesota and this university is how progressive you are. And now I've been other places in the country, and I can say for sure you're very progressive. Imagine this. The man sat back in his chair, propped his feet on his desk, and turned to my colleague and me and said, "What can I do for you, girls?" The year was 1985, and I had not been a girl for quite some time. My colleague was Ada Sue Hinshaw, who was chair of the research cabinet for ANA, and I was a newly elected junior member along to watch and learn. We were in the office of one of the institute directors at NIH to solicit his support for an institute of nursing. Fast forward 1 hour. The man had his feet firmly planted on the floor. He'd made a commitment to support us and told us to call on him if we needed his help for anything else. That, my friends, is influence. And what I'd like to talk about this morning is what Ada Sue and other leaders do to be influential, and how we can all learn to be more influential. And I'm especially excited to hear about what this dialogue, what emerges from your dialogue, because all of you are the participants in this system And you, every one of you, makes a difference. First, influential leaders are astute at reading the meaning behind the message. Now, sometimes people mean exactly what they say. Their words are congruent with their expressions, their gestures, and their movements. And most of the time, there's no hidden meaning. Words are straightforward. But the ability to understand the meaning behind the message is not simple, but it's no mystery. Known as a tell in poker, subtext in fiction and film, social intelligence in the social sciences, and by the rest of us as people smarts. Such signs reveal underlying thoughts and emotion. In other words, what people really mean. Understanding meaning goes beyond noticing the nonverbal behaviors that all of us are familiar with. It is part observation, part interpretation, and part intuition. Good actors do it all the time. Watch a movie with the sound muted and notice the actors' facial expressions, their gestures, and their movements. You will be surprised how much you can learn about the character and the story from such silent observation. So how do they do it? And how did Ada Sue know exactly what to do? She used her ability to read the meaning behind the message and responded in ways that engendered his support. Actually, we all have this ability. It's innate, hardwired as a survival skill. Even without specialized training, you can learn this skill. It's as simple and as difficult as paying attention. Such awareness of and reaction to people may sound calculating or false. It is neither. It is simply a process of becoming more and more sensitive to others, enabling you to respond accordingly. It is a way to enhance your ability to listen to others with greater perception and thus be more effective in all that you do. Second, leaders understand power and how to use it appropriately. Did Ada Sue have power? No. Did she have authority? No. She had no leverage over the Institute's director. She could not make him do what she wanted. If you had been Ada Sue, or me, in that situation, what would you have done? Would you have been intimidated by the director's position that he'd clearly staked out? I was. What was the meaning behind his message? This is my institute, my turf, I'm in charge. And how did she use her power? I will tell you. She used the power of presence. She was professional in her dress and her demeanor. She had a pleasant but neutral expression. She wasn't smiling. She sat up straight, looked him in the eye, and made her case, a case for which she was well prepared. And in a few moments, he asked, "What exactly is nursing research?" Ada Sue explained. Nursing research focuses on preventing disease and disability, managing chronic illness, promoting healthy lifestyles, and enhancing the care of patients at the end of life. All good outcomes, he agreed. But why do you need a separate institute for nursing research? After all, medicine is funded through the other institutes, arthritis, cancer, aging. Why would you need a separate institute? Couldn't nurse researchers receive funding from existing institute? Are you already funding nursing research? She asked innocently. Oh, I'm sure we are. Could you check? He called in a staff member who returned with voluminous sheets of paper, and we sat there painstakingly going down the list looking for PIs who were nurses or attached to nursing schools. And what do you think we found? Zero. Zilch. Now we had him. She'd convinced him that nursing research would benefit the public and, more importantly, members of Congress who controlled his funding, and that he wouldn't be challenged to fund nursing research out of his budget, and we had his support. Third, leaders commit to goals larger than themselves. We didn't know if we'd still be in the profession when or if a nursing institute became a reality, but we knew that the research that nurses could do would be good for the public's health. Ada Sue wasn't looking for a personal reward. She wanted what was best for the profession and thus for nurses' patients now and in the future. Which brings me to number 4. Leaders focus on the future. Futurists suggest that the future can be examined from 3 perspectives: the possible future, the probable future, or the preferable future. The possible future includes a wide range of possibilities and encompasses everything that might happen. The possible future includes wild cards, events that have a low likelihood of occurring but have a high impact if they do, such as 9/11, the uprisings in the Middle East, and more recently, Hurricane Sandy. Although we need to be able to deal with wild card incidents when they occur, our time is better spent focusing on events that are more likely to happen. The probable future is based on what is happening now and our guess about what will follow. The future is seen as an extension of today's trends. Oftentimes, this future is the one least likely to happen. American healthcare has been plagued by this type of thinking, adding more and more care and expecting a healthier population, often bested by other countries who spend far less. The preferable future, on the other hand, is what we want to have happen. It involves envisioning a future that does not yet exist, a nursing institute, for example, and taking action to create it. And 5th, leaders build and use a network. The impetus for our visit that day to NIH was begun by a report by the Institute of Medicine several years previously. In that report, they recommended that a federal research entity be established as part of the mainstream scientific community. This was a revolutionary idea in nursing. Organized nursing, as it does, debated this for several years. Would Congress really be willing to adequately fund nursing research? Would separating nursing research diminish its status in the scientific world? And you may or may not know that the University of Minnesota School of Nursing had one of the leading nurse researchers here in the mid-1980s. Sue Donaldson did basic science research, and she was one of the few nurses funded by NIH at that time. So nurses then began lobbying Congress, the administration, and the other institutes at NIH, a formidable task. A few members of Congress were interested because they saw the potential that nursing science had for improving the health of their constituents, translation, voters, but the administration was opposed to another institute at NIH. Step by step, nursing leaders persuaded, harassed, not only nursing directors, but members of Congress. A bill was born. Concern about cost and increasing bureaucracy emerged and was overcome. The bill passed, to be vetoed by President Reagan. Then a strange thing happened. Nursing made an unprecedented move. The profession came together. What can I say? United with one goal, and that was to override President Reagan's veto. And this Congress had never overridden a veto of this president at all. One by one across the country, nurses called their senators and congressional representatives, urging support for a nursing institute, explaining that nurses were represented only among a few funded researchers at other institutes who did not understand the impact of nursing interventions on health and recovery. A modest investment, they explained, would yield exponentially greater results. And thanks to a few persuasive members of Congress, a compromise was negotiated and the National Center for Nursing Research was established in 1985. And in 1993, it became an institute. And, as you probably know, Dr. Hinshaw became the Institute's first director. So how could we all learn to use these same skills that influential leaders know? Let's take them one by one. First, how can you read the meaning behind the message? Now remember that most of the time what people say and what they mean are congruent. Our interactions this morning are examples of straightforward communication. So it's not as if you have to constantly be looking for hidden meaning, but learning this skill will enable you to pick up, and if I'm not using too woohoo a word, a vibe. If you've ever walked into a room and felt the tension in there, you know what I mean. And just as you learn to read subtle signs and symptoms in your patients, you can call on these same skills as needed in interactions. To discover the meaning behind the message, keep in mind the following: the context, the relationship, and the emotion. What is the context of the situation? Is it a family member fuming about the care his loved one is receiving? Is it a coworker trying to undermine you? Where are you, in public, private office? Are there others around who can overhear or see you? And what's your relationship, a friend, a family member, an acquaintance, or a stranger? And what's your history? What are the emotions behind the words? Do they match his words? One time I ran into a friend in the grocery, and we chatted for a little bit, and when she left, my 4-year-old tugged on my sleeve. Why was she smiling, he asked, when she was mad? One way that helps is to keep the focus on the other person more than yourself. That's not easy because usually we're thinking about what we're going to say next. And it takes practice. Try observing people everywhere, especially in public. A lobby of an institution, the airport, that's a really good place. Have you ever been in line someplace and you could feel the mood of someone behind you or in front of you? You will be surprised how much you can learn if you pay attention. Second, leaders know how to use power. And how can we learn to do the same? Power is not a 4-letter word. Used appropriately, power has the potential to influence. And we all have power, more in some areas of our lives, less in others. Authority is often confused with power. Certainly, people with authority have power, but so do all of us, regardless of our position. If you think you need a formal position to use your power, let me ask you this. Have you ever known a ward clerk or an office assistant who knew everything that was going on in the institution? That person had no official position, but she has power. I've seen, and probably you have too, nurses who fail to use their power or they undermine it. They're left with wondering why they failed to get something accomplished. They may fail to use the power of their position, their expertise, their connections to others, or their access to information. And we can undermine our power in many ways. Here are just 3 of them. And the one that I absolutely hold at number 1, complaining to our friends at work about a problem. The outcome is we feel better, they get it off their chest, but nothing changes. And as my esteemed friend Marie Manthe says, deliver the mail to the right address. Another way we undermine our power is to make excuses. Administration won't go for it, I don't have time. We tried that before. And a third way is to react emotionally. And let me say something about this. If we stomp off angrily, if we sulk, or we burst into tears, that undermines our power. Now, sometimes in an emotionally charged situation, we do need to have a few moments, and we can take those until we're ready to handle the situation. But the way that it helps me to think is if anyone in my same position would have this same experience, then it's not personal, it's business. Third, leaders commit to goals larger than themselves. And how can you do that? Let me ask you, I want you to think about this a little bit. What matters to you? What really matters? If you had $1 million and you could only spend it on something unrelated to yourself, your family, or your friends, where would you spend it? On a homeless shelter? To help domestic violence victims? Free innocent incarcerated prisoners? Care for Alzheimer's patients or their caregivers? Research on alternative care outcomes? Do you have something in mind? Not if you do. Okay, thank you. Now, make a commitment to further that cause. Fourth, leaders build and use a network. You can do the same. Donna Cardillo, a well-known nurse speaker, says, networking is one of the most valuable skills a nurse can develop. This fits exactly in with what Dan was talking about, the connections between people, and they don't have to be, you don't have to be locked in lockstep with someone, you're just making connections. Networking is reciprocal. You help others, and they help you. There's nothing devious or underhanded about such a relationship. And each time we encounter someone, we have an opportunity to build a reciprocal relationship. What do we have in common? And sometimes we don't know what that is. And we don't know if there will be a time when we can help that person or that person can help us. No matter, be aware that future possibilities might emerge and treat each person accordingly. And this is most important. We are building a relationship that may serve both of us in the future. And social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, texting, and online discussion groups make this especially easy to both keep in touch with people that we don't see often and to let them know about what we're doing, what we might need from them, or what way we could help them. And the contact management systems, such as Constant Contact, make reaching people, a group of people, as easy as sending an email. Of course, I am going to advise you to join organizations and become active in them. Organizational work enables collaborative groups to achieve more than a single person could on his or her own, as we've learned from the example about the Nursing Institute. Plus, you gain experience in relationship building and leadership. I met Dr. Hinshaw when I had been elected to the research cabinet in ANA. How did I get there? My mentor was Shirley Martin, founding dean of the College of Nursing at the University of Missouri, St. Louis, where I began my academic career. She was also a former member of the board of directors of ANA. She took me to meetings, introduced me to someone who could contribute, and behind the scenes suggested my name for committee openings. I give her credit today for my success in organizational work. I wouldn't have been hired at the U, wouldn't have been elected to various committees, and for certain, I wouldn't have been a Sigma Theta Tau International president. And finally, leaders focus on the future. What is in your future? Where do you want to be in 1 year, in 5, at the end of your career? Sometimes it's helpful to ask yourself, when my career in nursing ends, where am I? Am I chief nurse of the University Hospital? Director of the Leadership Institute in the School of Nursing? Sorry, Dan, someone's going to take your place someday. Teaching students and reaping the reward of knowing how fortunate their future patients are? Caring for the sickest of the sick? Or advocating for them? And one caveat about your future. We've all built our work on the shoulders of those who have gone before us. So we are charged to further the careers of those who come after us, our successors, whether it's before we leave an organization or we leave the profession. And let's all commit to furthering others' future. That's part of our legacy. I don't know the future, yours or mine. But what I know is that we create the future by what we do today or by what we fail to do. And let me leave you with my favorite adage. The answer is no if you do not ask. Consider this. Where would nursing research be today if we hadn't asked? Thank you very, very much.
Influential, yes, right? Powerful, inspirational. So there is this power in relationships, and it's not about fixing the parts or the system or the people, but it's about paying attention to what emerges as a result of the interactions. And so we kind of want to take this a little bit deeper in relationship to Eleanor's message to us. And so some of you may be familiar with Peter Senge's work about the 5 whys. I think maybe they use this in Six Sigma and getting at root cause analysis. How many of you do root cause analysis in your organization? And basically this is an opportunity to kind of go beneath the surface. So basically you ask the question why 5 times. Well, why was that a problem? Well, it might have been because there was something wrong with the system. Well, why was that a problem? Well, it must have been something wrong with the janitor that day. Or why was that a problem? Well, the janitor didn't come to work that day. Why was that a problem? Well, he had problems getting to work because of the, so you kind of go deeper and deeper and deeper. I use the 5 whys actually with doctoral students and master's students to get at what is their real burning passion and why do they really want to study something. So one of the liberating structures that Keith McCandless has developed goes beyond 5, and it's called the 9 whys. So 9 whys. So really an opportunity to think very deeply about what it is that is important to you. And so it also is about becoming clear about what the purpose is. So what is the purpose of nursing influence? What is the purpose of influence in your life? And why is it so important to develop the skill set that Eleanor has identified in terms of the purpose of becoming influential? So for the next half hour or so, we're going to engage in a little bit deeper conversation in terms of the 9 whys. And this is the structure of the liberating structure process here. And so this is an opportunity. We're going to kind of break up these rows a little bit, but in a minute. So really, I would like for you to all engage when we get ready to start in a 1-minute quiet reflection, generating a list of activities about why you think it's important for nurses to become influential, why you think it's important for you to become influential. And then once you have that personal self-reflection, we're going to put you in 10 minutes in a twosie, a pair, and give you an opportunity to kind of share and engage each other in a dialogue about why, so that you can kind of both engage and ask questions and sort of engage people in an appreciative sort of way, not to really tell them or preach to them, but just really try to extract and elicit from them what it is that they're thinking about the why of their influence. And then after that, we're going to break, and the twosies is going to find a foursie, so that 2 people will then connect with 2 other people. So there'll be a group of 4. And we'll talk about what happened then as you began to debrief and go deeper and deeper and deeper into these 9 whys. And then we'll come back and we'll kind of call the wisdom and look for patterns. Look for patterns in discovery and identify if we can get clearer on the purpose in relationship to why it's so important to become influential in terms of your role as an identity and your mission and your values and your vision as a nurse.